Primary results are in. Some surprises, the end of one career. Apparently money can't buy everything. And the debate over voter turnout. It is your post-primary must-watch. MiWeek starts right now.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta.
Welcome to MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining us. Less than 18%. That was the voter turnout for Tuesday's primary. And in many cases, the primary ended up sealing who would cruise to victory in November. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Coming up, why early polls didn't mean a thing in two big races. Plus, is it the end of a political career for Wayne County Executive Bob Ficano? And what does a new executive have to tackle first? Plus, the significance of a win for Brenda Lawrence in the 14th Congressional District, an angry acceptance speech on the west side of the state, and voter turnout. Is it time to change when we have primaries? We'll also take a look at a few more headlines for you tonight, including the fight for gay marriage in Michigan and the judge's concerns about Detroit post-bankruptcy. We'll have that all for you tonight, so sit back and relax while I bring in our MiWeek contributors, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson. Gentlemen, it's good to see you. A little post-primary. It was a nice week, huh? This was probably one of the most interesting primary seasons that I've seen in a while. Nolan, would you agree?
Well, it certainly was one of the most crowded primary seasons. There were a lot of contested races, a lot of competitive races. It was a more interesting election than we've seen in recent years, which is why I'm surprised more people didn't participate.
What do you think, Stephen? Is this something, we haven't seen something like this in a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, it's weird to have primaries when we do. This August thing confuses people, and you know, people are not engaged in the election. I can't think of the lack of, you know, buzz that I've seen before an election, before I saw this week. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was thinking about it. I was surprised that we got to the numbers that we did.
Might have, you know, it would have helped if we'd have had a primary in the governor and Senate race.
Right.
And we didn't. Both parties decided early on they were going to anoint candidates rather than let their members pick a candidate. So I think that dimmed the enthusiasm for the election a little, but still, you had 4 open congressional seats. That never happens.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about voter turnout in just a little bit, but I want to start with, I think, a few specific things that we saw happen here on Tuesday night, and a lot of them you had actually predicted that would be the things to watch. Let's look at the 14th Congressional District. Brenda Lawrence winning the Democratic nod there. What is the significance of her win, Stephen?
Well, I mean, I think for her personally, it's really significant. This is somebody who's run for, it seems like every open office that would, you know, cover her geography since about 2008. So to finally get that win has to feel good. You know, it was a much closer race than I thought it would be for her. The polls did not show her. I don't think there was a single poll that showed her winning.
No.
And most of them showed her trailing pretty badly behind Hanson Clark,
who finished third.
Detroit, who finished third. So I'm not sure how the polling ended up so off there. But the other dynamic here, I think, is that seat, which, you know, is both Oakland County and Wayne County, the Grosse Pointes and Detroit, and who will dominate that seat. This is the second person to hold that seat, and it's the second person from Oakland County. And so I think now you're starting to wonder whether Detroit, that's one of Detroit's 2 congressional seats, whether you can get a Detroiter into that into that seat. Hanson Clark was a congressperson before. He should have had a pretty good advantage coming into that race and couldn't pull it off.
I think it was interesting also that you saw Rudy Hobbs in the last couple of days, really the amount of television advertising and the money and the support that was infused, the endorsements that were infused in his campaign.
Well, he got a big kick from the unions, got a lot of money in, and he did make a last-minute surge. He had been running a little weaker in the race, and the polls were showing him surging at the end. He came very close to winning it, and you have to look at voter turnouts. Steve was talking about the makeup of the district, and that's a good point. I mean, it's still more heavily weighted to Detroit on paper, but when you look at the actual votes, this is an Oakland County district. Detroit turnout was so dismal that if it had been just a straight Oakland County Detroit candidate rather than 3 candidates in the race, I think Brenda Lawrence still would have run. And you've got to wonder now, is this an Oakland County seat or a Detroit seat in terms of its focus? Where will her focus be? She's been mayor of Southfield. She's an Oakland County person. She's not out of Detroit. No. And you have to wonder where her focus is going to be when she goes to Congress. Although
Brenda's born in Detroit and grew up there and spent a lot of the campaign emphasizing her empathy for Detroit, talking about things that would happen in the city and what she might do with them. She did a lot of campaigning in the city. I'm not sure that she's such a stranger.
But she's not out of this sort of Detroit political environment, the political culture there. She is a suburban
She's
politician.
Oakland County, no question.
The interesting thing for me in this race also, and no offense to any of our pollsters out there who we love and work with all the time, but the polls didn't mean anything. They had her in second or third place and distant, and had Hanson Clark way out front. Does an early poll like that, and the fact that the most recent poll had him up, does it make a candidate maybe pull back a little bit or say, wow, I think I kind of maybe have that? Is there something to that?
I think the problem with the polls is the kind of polls that we're doing. They are snapshot polls. No one does a tracking poll, which is going to give you a little better idea of momentum when you're asking sort of the same people over time what they plan to do. You can see the trend toward change. We had an early poll that showed Hanson Clark winning, and then a later poll.
It still had him up, but had Rudy Hobbs also
had Rudy
jumping.
Hobbs really moving up. I'm not sure what accounts for the missing the Brenda Lawrence piece of this. But
she was never out of it in the polls.
No, she was not out of it.
And if you look at the county executive race, the polling was pretty well on in that race. The 11th district race, polling was fairly close there with the actual results. Same is true out in West Michigan in the Amash Ellis race.
But none of those were
the fourth district, and we'll talk about the 4th district in a little bit. The 4th district polling was off. It had Paul Mitchell all the way up.
But those are closer races, and I think that's
not in the final polls. Moulin-R was up in the final polls.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize that when you're dealing with polls that show 18-19% undecided, those people make up their mind on those in the last couple days.
Yeah.
And the final polls that I was looking at Monday night had Moulin-R up by 8-9 points. So, I mean, they didn't really miss the mark, but you don't hear about those last day polls.
I mean, the point about undecideds is important. When you have a close race and a large number of undecideds, I think it's harder in the polls to actually predict who's gonna win. And maybe there was a late election day break for Brenda Lawrence in the 14th that no one.
And also looking at undecideds who would vote and not those people who would just say,
right,
I'm just going to stay home.
And 60% of the voters in that district are women. So, I mean, you would think that she started with a natural advantage with the electorate.
Again, it's always on turnout and who is going to turn out.
Yeah.
Let's shift over to the Wayne County Executives race. Warren Evans obviously took the Democratic nod here, but I want to first talk about Bob Ficano and the fact that, is this truly, you believe, the end of his political career?
Oh, an elected office, by all means.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd try for another elected office. What would be the point? I mean, he's going to walk out of there with a really rich pension. I mean, that's the benefit of being a politician. Who knows? He's in Wayne County, he might get 6. I mean, that's the benefit of being an elected official in Wayne County. You know, you're set for life after very little service. He served 30 years. He's going to have a nice fat pension. I don't think he's done in terms of his career. He's not going to run for elected office, but I believe you'll see him doing something. I mean, the UAW will find something for him to do, or he'll show up somewhere. I mean, that's how it works in Wayne County.
You wrote a column this week about him and said he was nice, but
Nice guy.
just didn't get the job done.
Well, I said more than that. I mean, he was a nice guy. He never was his own man. I mean, from the beginning, he was sort of had political bosses, and he very faithfully followed their marching orders. And I think it's when he surrounded himself by people who sort of pushed him into a different arena, tried to, you know, make him be a little more creative, that he got in real trouble. He really did surround himself in his last term with some, at the beginning of his last term, with some questionable characters, and got involved in some really foolish enterprises and activities, and that cost him. I mean, for 30 years, he just plodded along, no scandal, not much of anything, and then boom, walks off the dock.
And that's what he'll be remembered for in terms of his political career, Stephen, do you think?
I think at least in the immediate future, that's how he's going to be remembered. I think, you know, everybody is more than one thing, and everyone's history is a little more complicated than it looks at first blush. There are some really positive things that Bob Ficano accomplished too. I mean, the diversification of Wayne County government, bringing in the significant Arab American population that lives in the county into government, giving them jobs in real places of authority. That was Bob Ficano, as much as this other stuff. Some of the development things that went on in the county over the time that he was there will pay off, I think, in big ways down the road. Probably long after he's gone. The Aerotropolis investment, for instance, I think is a real sort of point toward the future, the economic future here. You know, he was not a bad county executive, it seemed, until this last 4 years, when lots of things just seemed to come unraveled. I mean, the jail, the horrible mismanagement of
But
that
it wasn't
project.
coincidence. I mean, it's not coincidence, Steve. I mean, the irony here is that he's got a very good team in place now.
He does
but
now.
But at the
that's
start
right.
of the team, when he had Azam Elder, Turkia Mullen, others, you know,
Yeah.
sort of taking over
It's a
his
mess.
office, if you will, you know, starting this jail without any sort of oversight or plan. You know, it was so typical Wayne County. We're just going to do this, and you know, nobody's ever watching. So, you know, if it goes off the tracks, who cares? And you know, the Guardian building, they lost $35 million on that. The race course, $20-some million they lost on that. They just started doing some
Didn't
really
manage
goofy
things very
things,
well, yeah.
and then plus sort of crafting these self-enrichment deals. You know, Turkia Mullen walking off with $200,000 severance package. The fellow who walked out at 40 years old with a $100,000 a year pension after 8 years
Medical
service.
benefits for
that
life.
kind of things voters notice.
Yeah. Well, speaking about what voters notice, and I go back to the jail and the fact that it's kind of sitting there rotting now, let's talk about what the next county executive will have to do and what he'll have to start on. First order of business for that person, should it be Warren Evans or should it be someone from the Republican side? We know that the county will probably skew one way. It's going to be Warren Evans, but I have to say there's still an election.
There is
on
an
here.
election.
There is an election.
Maybe,
So
maybe voters will wake up.
for first order of business for that new county executive.
Well, I mean, the budget is the biggest issue in the county, and there are some pretty tricky moving pieces with that budget. The prosecutor and the sheriff, who are elected on their own, don't report to the county executive, have big parts of the financial picture in Wayne County and have been overspending lots of years. Now they're overspending for the single most important service that Wayne County government provides, and you know, public safety is a big deal in that county, and so I think Warren Evans has got to find more money for them, but then also hold them more accountable for staying within the budget that he can set. He's going to have to do that by paring back the executive branch. I mean, there's going to be some things that office does not do anymore that will free up money to be able to send to the prosecutor and the jail.
Is that the first thing, Nolan? Budget?
Well, government efficiency, I think, is got to be job one, or he's never going to get the budget under control. Wayne County spends about 30 to 40% more per capita on government than does Oakland or Macomb County.
But they're providing more services.
Well, and that is one of the things that Warren Evan has to look at. Yeah. What's this county going to be?
How many of those services are they going to maybe have to cut back on?
What are the services that taxpayers really expect and need and are willing to pay for? Because you can't keep providing all of these services with the money that's coming in. So I think the first job is to prioritize and figure out what it is we are going to do.
All right, let me take you to the 4th Congressional District. We talked briefly about it, the Paul Mitchell, John Molinar race on the GOP side. So money can't buy everything. Paul Mitchell infused $4 million into that campaign, and it turned out John Molinar surged ahead with some key endorsements from Dave Camp himself and Bill Schuette, and ended up taking the day there. Surprised that that infusion of cash didn't make that much of a dent?
Well, yeah, I guess, although, you know, maybe it did. I mean, Paul Mitchell started really with no political profile at all, and he made the race competitive. And, you know, he spent $4 million doing it. I hope, you know, I assume that didn't dent him too hard in terms of his lifestyle.
Well, you got $4 million to spend, exactly.
But, you know, he started from nowhere, and that's what you have to do, I guess, in politics. How else is a guy who has never been in office before, never run a campaign, how else is he going to get out there and make a name for himself? You also had same thing in the Amash race out in West Michigan. Brian Ellis spent a lot more money and didn't win. But on the other hand, Dave Trott spent a couple $1 million and did win. So I don't know that you can say money doesn't work in politics yet. It doesn't always work.
So it's interesting that you bring up the Justin Amash, Brian Ellis race, because in his acceptance speech or his victory speech, Justin Amash really lashed out at his opponent, at Brian Ellis, and said, "You owe me an apology for the disgraceful campaign you ran." And then went after former Representative Pete Hoekstra as well and said, "You are a disgrace." You know, usually on election night, everyone kind of shakes hands and says, "You know what? It's over now. Now we move forward." What was your reaction to that, Stephen, when you saw that?
Well, I mean, I think it's not out of character for Justin Amash, who's a pretty quirky individual and very independent, and probably didn't appreciate some of the things that were said during that campaign. It was a nasty campaign, and they took after him pretty hard. I think he resents Pete Hoekstra, whose district that's not, by the way. You know, Pete represented another district. You know, coming in and sort of trying to muscle him out. You know, this is a fight between Justin and the GOP establishment on that side of the state, which really feels like his views, which are pretty consistently civil libertarian, just don't fit with what they need out of a person in that seat. You know, but he's not you know somebody you're going to push around and slap around, and he's just going to take it. I mean, he's gonna push back, and so that's what he did on election day.
And apparently it fit with the voters, because the constituents, they voted for him.
Yeah, they did. And, you know, but normally you would think that victory is vengeance enough. And, you know, it wasn't a very gracious display, but it does explain why so many people out there have had their fill of Justin Amash. You know, he is, you know, quirky is one way of describing him. You know, he's rubs folks the wrong way out there. And I think he'd have served himself better by being a little more gracious and a little more conciliatory and trying to bring the district together. I think he's now guaranteed himself 2 more years where people are going to be plotting and trying to figure out how do we unseat
another primary
this guy.
challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other
he's got a target on him.
It just wasn't a politically smart thing to do.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. And he's had a rough go of him. You think about the 2 terms that he's served. I mean, there's always a rancor around conversation about him and what he does. But you know, I got to give him credit. There are a few people in Congress who you can describe as philosophically consistent. You know, that they do what they believe, almost all the time, and Amash does that. You know, whether you agree or not, I think he deserves credit for he votes his conscience, and there's something admirable about that.
All right, let's, while we wrap up our primary conversation, voter turnout. We talk about this every time, and we alluded to it at the top of the show today. 17.5% was the voter turnout, and this race, or this primary, decided some pivotal races, congressional seats that probably will not change party hands come November. How do we change turnout? Should we be looking to change turnout, and how do we even go about that, and who's in charge of that?
Well, there's a couple ways of looking at it, I guess. I mean, I agree with Steve. August is a terrible time to hold a primary. But if you look at states that hold May and June primaries, I looked at Ohio's numbers last week. They do a lot better, but it's still like 30%. It's not burning the house down. And Indiana, who holds a spring primary, doesn't do all that much better than Michigan. So that's not the magic bullet. I mean, you can look at it and say, well, people are feel disenfranchised, disillusioned, don't feel they can make a difference. They feel like, you know, it's a foregone conclusion. You can say they're just lazy, uninformed, apathetic, what have you. But on the other hand, you can look at it and say, we seem to have had a very informed electorate turnout this time, despite the low numbers. I mean, I would have not thought Prop 1 could pass based on how horribly written it was. But people came out, understood it was important for the state, read past the confusing language, and voted yes. So you had folks making some really good decisions at the polls this time, those who did turn out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you've got to move the date, right? I wouldn't move it to spring. I'd probably move it back. We used to do it in September.
It's been a long time since we've done it.
Yeah, it's only been like 5 or 6 years.
No.
Though,
2000. We had one in 2001, I remember.
2001 was right. Kwame Kilpatrick's.
That's the city primary.
Yeah,
that's
the city
not
primary.
Primaries. But anyway.
You know, I think, you know, there are a lot of reasons that people don't vote, but I also think it's unconscionable that because people don't show up for primaries, and we know that, then we put important questions,
taxes particularly,
on the primary ballot. You know, Proposal 1 should have been a November issue, as far as I'm concerned. Right. I mean, when more people show up.
Any tax issue should be.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, any tax issue, any constitutional issue, the big things that government does. They keep putting them on the primary ballot and sort of trying to sneak things in. I think that's not particularly upstanding thing to do. You know, you did have people come out and make some really important and what seemed like reasonable choices, but you always wonder, you know, does that make any sense? You have such a small minority deciding for
everybody else.
That's not the way it's supposed to work.
All right. Well, it's time now for a look at some more headlines. Look at a few more stories that are making headlines across the state for you, including the gay marriage fight making its way to the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals and the judge questioning Detroit's plan for post-bankruptcy. Let's first look at gay marriage and the question that's being decided now in Cincinnati, and it's a couple of other states, not just Michigan. What should we be looking for from these three judges who are deciding, Stephen?
Well, I mean, this is a consolidated set of cases that raises all of the big questions. I think if you're betting on what the Supreme Court will ultimately take a look at, it's going to be this case. That you have every issue at stake in these cases. You know, the 6th Circuit is something of a wild card. It's a very interesting group of judges down there. They do some things that go outside of the sort of political predictable behavior that people try to put on judges. I think the case that we have from Michigan, the opinion is written in pretty ironclad language. I would be very surprised if they overturn that. But again, I think this is going to end up at the Supreme Court, and this is where we will get the ruling that decides what marriage equality is going to look like from a constitutional perspective.
Do you agree on that, Nolan?
Oh yeah, I think it's going to the Supreme Court, and it was hard to read what this panel of judges in Cincinnati, where they were headed. You had one judge who clearly thinks that the state should, each individual state should decide marriage policy, another judge who seemed to strongly disagree with that, and a third who didn't play his, didn't show his hand. So it's hard to read where the case the decision is going in Cincinnati, but I think it's definitely clear it's going to Supreme Court ultimately.
Real quick, in the short time we have left, the Detroit Judge Rhodes is a little concerned with the city's plan of adjustment, saying, I'm not quite sure I see where all the money is going to be coming from for a lot of the things, and also the cooperation from city government that they're actually going to move forward with this plan. Stephen, you can take that last stab at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need more money. I mean, we're going to free up 150.
Nolan, you can't laugh when you said we need more money.
$150 million a year more out of the budget than we had before. That's not enough to do all the things you need to do in Detroit.
All right, and again, they're heading into court on August 21st. That's going to do it for My Week. Thanks so much for joining us. Check us out at MiWeek.org for any shows that you might have missed. Catch up with us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next Thursday. Take care.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta.